The eviction notice arrived at 7:43 p.m. on Christmas Eve, disguised as a family email about living arrangements. 47 minutes later, my son discovered that betraying a 73-year-old former federal prosecutor with stage 2 diabetes was the most expensive mistake of his entitled life. My name is Harrison Mitchell, and at 73 years old, after serving 31 years as a federal prosecutor specializing in financial crimes, I never imagined I would need those skills to protect myself from my own flesh and blood. The email notification on my phone seemed innocent enough as I sat in my study, reviewing some old case files while Christmas music drifted in from the living room where my family had gathered for our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. The subject line read, "Dad, important family update." I adjusted my reading glasses. The ones I had worn since my diabetes diagnosis 3 years ago started affecting my vision, and opened what would become evidence exhibit number 1 in the complete financial destruction of my son Robert and his wife Catherine. "Dad," the email began, "after much discussion, the family has decided it's time for you to transition to assisted living. We've already made arrangements at Sunny Acres Senior Community. The movers will arrive December 26th at 9 a.m. We'll be taking over the Westchester estate to better manage the family assets. This decision is final and in everyone's best interest. Please don't make this difficult. Robert." I read it twice, then a third time, my prosecutorial mind automatically cataloging every presumption, every legal overreach, every fatal mistake my son had just made. The family he referenced consisted of himself, his wife Catherine, and their 2 adult children who had been poisoning the well against me for the past 18 months. Ever since my wife Margaret passed away and left me as the sole owner of our $3.2 million estate and guardian of a fortune, they clearly felt entitled to inherit while I was still breathing. The most amusing part? They thought my type 2 diabetes and recent mobility issues from a minor stroke made me weak. They thought the grief of losing Margaret after 49 years of marriage had broken me. They thought a former federal prosecutor who had sent white-collar criminals to prison for 3 decades had somehow forgotten how to recognize a conspiracy when it was happening in his own dining room. I closed the email and pulled up a different application on my phone, one that my family didn't know existed. The banking app for Henderson and Associates Trust, the firm that had been managing a very particular portfolio for the past 15 years. A portfolio that existed completely outside the family trust, outside the estate planning documents my son thought he understood, outside the realm of assets he believed he was entitled to inherit. You see, when you spend 3 decades prosecuting financial crimes, you learn that the best defense against greed is invisibility. The Westchester estate, the one Robert was so eager to steal, that was worth $3.2 million, yes. But it was also leveraged as collateral for a private loan I had taken out 6 months ago, a loan that would come due in exactly 72 hours with a balloon payment of $4.7 million. A loan secured by a company Robert had never heard of, managed by lawyers he had never met, with terms that would make his Christmas Eve email look like the beginning of his financial obituary. I stood up from my leather chair, my movements deliberate despite the slight tremor in my left hand from the stroke. The Christmas music had stopped. Through the closed door of my study, I could hear muffled voices, Robert probably sharing the good news with the rest of the family, convinced that their coup was complete. Walking to my mahogany desk, I opened the bottom drawer and retrieved a manila folder marked Contingency Planning Family Betrayal. I had started this file the day after Margaret's funeral, when Robert first suggested I was too emotional to make financial decisions. Every conversation, every suggestion about powers of attorney, every concerned family meeting about my declining capacity, all documented, all recorded, all waiting for this moment. The first document in the folder was a medical evaluation from Dr. James Crawford, dated 3 weeks ago. Mr. Mitchell demonstrates complete cognitive function and decision-making capacity. His diabetes is well controlled, and the minor mobility issues from his cerebrovascular event have not impacted his mental acuity. He is fully capable of managing his personal and financial affairs. Cost: $2,500. Worth every penny for what was about to happen. The second document was more interesting, a private investigator's report on Robert's financial situation. My successful lawyer son, the one who drove a Bentley and lived in a $1.8 million house, was drowning in debt. 2 mortgages, a home equity line of credit maxed out, credit cards with $340,000 in combined balances, and a gambling problem that had cost him nearly $500,000 in the last year alone. His wife Catherine's shopping addiction had contributed another $200,000 to their financial hemorrhage. They needed my money not because they were greedy. Well, not just because they were greedy. They needed it because without it, they would be bankrupt within 6 months. The Bentley was 3 payments behind. The house was facing foreclosure. Their entire facade of success was built on quicksand, and they saw my estate as their life raft. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts to a number listed simply as M. Thompson. Marcus Thompson had been my closest friend since law school and was now a senior partner at Thompson, Hayes & Fitzgerald, one of the most ruthless estate law firms in New York. More importantly, he owed me his career after I had chosen not to prosecute him for a minor SEC violation 30 years ago, a decision that had allowed him to become one of the most powerful attorneys in the state. "Harrison," Marcus answered on the first ring. "Merry Christmas Eve. I assume this isn't a social call." Code red, Marcus. The contingency we discussed. They finally made their move. Email evidence of conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, false imprisonment, and theft of assets valued over $3 million. I need the full package implemented tonight. Consider it done. I'll have my team at the courthouse when it opens on the 26th. Emergency injunctions, cease and desist orders, and the special surprise we prepared. Everything. And Marcus? Make sure the mortgage company gets their notice about the balloon payment. I want Robert to get that call at exactly 9 a.m. on the 26th. With pleasure, Harrison. Anything else? Yes. Contact Patricia Stonehart at the state attorney's office. Tell her I have a gift-wrapped case of elder abuse and financial fraud. She's been wanting to make an example of someone since the Petersham case fell apart. My son just volunteered for the position. I ended the call and opened my laptop. The email to Robert took exactly 3 minutes to compose. 3 sentences that would detonate his entire world. "Robert, your email has been forwarded to my attorneys and the state attorney's office. The movers you scheduled will be met by law enforcement. Your access to all family trust accounts has been terminated effective immediately. H. Mitchell, ESQ." I hit send at exactly 8:04 p.m. Then I opened the trust management system and executed the transfers I had been preparing for months. $2.3 million moved from a family trust to the Margaret Mitchell Memorial Foundation, a charity I had established to support elderly victims of financial abuse. Another $1.8 million transferred to irrevocable education trusts for my grandchildren, trusts that specifically excluded Robert and Catherine as trustees or beneficiaries. The phone rang at 8:09 p.m. "Robert. Dad, what the hell is this email? You can't do this." "Actually, Robert, I can. Did you know that attempting to forcibly relocate an elderly person against their will is a felony in New York? Did you know that conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse carries a sentence of up to 15 years? Did you know that when you sent that email from your law firm servers, you implicated your partners in a criminal conspiracy? You're bluffing. You're sick, Dad. The diabetes, the stroke, you're not thinking clearly. The medical evaluation in my files says otherwise, as does the recording of this conversation, which will make excellent evidence. Tell me, Robert, did Catherine know about your gambling debts when she encouraged this scheme? Or were you planning to pay off your markers with my money without telling her? Silence. The kind of silence I had heard hundreds of times in interrogation rooms when criminals realized their plans had fallen apart. Dad, please. We can talk about this. I didn't mean dash. You meant every word. Just like you meant it when you told Catherine last month that I, quote, wouldn't last another year anyway, and that it would be easier to just take control now. Yes, Robert, your house has been bugged for 6 months. Every conversation, every plan, every disgusting comment about waiting for me to die, all recorded, all admissible. You bugged my house? That's illegal. No, I had the private investigator bug the house I own. You see, when you took that second mortgage last year, you needed a co-signer with better credit. I agreed, but I also insisted on being added to the deed. Your house is technically half mine, which means I had every right to install security equipment on my property. You really should read documents before you sign them, counselor. The sound of breaking glass came through the phone. Robert's famous temper getting the better of him. The balloon payment on the Westchester property comes due in 72 hours, I continued calmly. $4.7 million. When I don't pay it, the property transfers to LMC Holdings, a company owned entirely by the Margaret Mitchell Memorial Foundation. Your inheritance just became a tax write-off for charity. You mortgaged the house? Our family home. My house. Margaret's and my house. The one you were so eager to steal. Tell me, how were you planning to explain my sudden relocation to the rest of the family? A fall down the stairs? Sudden dementia? Or were you going to drug me first to make it easier? We would never dash. The search history on Catherine's laptop suggests otherwise. Sedatives for elderly. How to have someone declared incompetent. Power of attorney without consent. Fascinating reading. Patricia Stonehart at the state attorney's office found it particularly interesting. I could hear Catherine's voice in the background now, shrill and panicked. The conspirators turning on each other already. Dad, this is insane. You're destroying your own family over a misunderstanding. No, Robert. You destroyed this family the day you decided I was an obstacle to your inheritance rather than your father. I'm simply documenting the destruction for the authorities. I walked to the window of my study, looking out at the snow beginning to fall on the estate grounds. The garden where Margaret and I had renewed our vows on our 40th anniversary. The gazebo where Rebecca had gotten married. The pool where the grandchildren had learned to swim. All of it would be gone soon, transformed into funds for elderly victims of the exact kind of abuse Robert had attempted. The investigators will be interviewing your partners at the firm after the holidays, I continued. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to learn about your gambling debts and the clients' funds you've been borrowing to cover them. Oh yes, I know about that too. Mr. Yamamoto's trust fund that's mysteriously $400,000 lighter than it should be. The Peterson estate that's missing $275,000 in bonds? Your partners are going to have some interesting questions for you. You're lying. You couldn't possibly know Dash. Your secretary Linda has been very helpful. It turns out that when you fire someone for refusing your sexual advances and then threaten to destroy their career if they talk, they become extremely motivated to document every financial irregularity they witnessed. She kept copies of everything, Robert. Every altered document, every forged signature, every client fund transfer that went to Vegas instead of investments. The phone went silent except for what sounded like hyperventilating. The sound of a man watching his entire world collapse in real time. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice taking on the tone I had used in closing arguments for 3 decades. Tonight, you're going to go home and tell Catherine the truth about your debts. All of them. Tomorrow, you're going to enjoy Christmas with your children. It will likely be your last as a free man. On the 26th, you'll be served with cease and desist orders, civil lawsuits, and criminal charges. Your assets will be frozen, your passport confiscated, and your law license suspended pending investigation. Dad, please. I'm your son. Think of your grandchildren. I am thinking of them. That's why their education trusts are now fully funded and protected from their criminal parents. They'll be able to attend any university they choose, pursue any career they want, free from the toxic influence of parents who see family as nothing more than a source of funds. You're really going to let them arrest me? Your own son. I spent 31 years putting criminals in prison, Robert. The fact that you share my DNA doesn't grant you immunity from consequences. If anything, it makes your betrayal worse. You had every advantage, education, opportunity, a family that loved you. You threw it all away for greed. I heard a door slam through the phone. Catherine leaving, most likely. Rats and sinking ships. She's going to divorce me, Robert said, his voice hollow. Probably. Though given her own criminal exposure, she might want to focus on finding a good lawyer instead. The FBI takes a dim view of conspiracy to commit elder abuse, especially when it involves interstate commerce. Those shopping trips to Milan and Paris? All funded with stolen money. That makes it federal. FBI? Dad, you didn't dash. Assistant Director Sarah Chun owes me several favors. She was particularly interested in the interstate nature of your crimes. Apparently, there's a task force focusing on elder abuse by family members. You're about to become their poster child. I sat back down at my desk, pulling up the security camera feeds from around the house. Robert's Bentley was speeding down the driveway, fishtailing slightly on the fresh snow. In his panic, he had left his wife and children behind. So much for family solidarity. Your mother would be heartbroken, Robert said. One last desperate manipulation. Your mother saw this coming. That's why she insisted on the prenuptial agreement with the infidelity clause, the separate trust structure, and the poison pill provisions in the estate planning. She knew that grief might cloud my judgment, but greed would clear it. Every protective measure I'm using now? Margaret put them in place. Even from beyond the grave, she's protecting me from you. That broke him. I could hear the sobs through the phone. Whether genuine or calculated, I neither knew nor cared. Consider this your notice, I concluded. You have 48 hours to hire criminal defense attorneys. I suggest you liquidate whatever assets you have left to pay for them, though given your debts, that won't be much. The house will be foreclosed on by February. The Bentley will be repossessed next week. Your country club membership was revoked this afternoon after I informed them about the $50,000 in unpaid dues you've been hiding. How long have you been planning this? Since the day after your mother's funeral, when you suggested I was too grief-stricken to handle finances. Every move you've made since then has been anticipated, documented, and prepared for. You thought you were playing chess, Robert. You didn't realize I had already won the game before you made your first move. What am I supposed to do now? I neither know nor care. Perhaps you'll find employment at one of those nursing homes you researched for me. I understand Sunny Acres is hiring, though they do run background checks. I ended the call and blocked his number. Then Catherine's. Then their children's. The family that had plotted my imprisonment in a nursing home no longer existed to me. The next call was to Rebecca, my daughter in California. She answered with warmth in her voice. Dad. Merry Christmas Eve. How was dinner? Eventful. I need you to know that your brother won't be part of our lives anymore. I'll explain everything after the holidays, but I wanted you to hear it from me first. Oh, Dad, what did he do? He tried to have me declared incompetent and steal the estate. It didn't work out well for him. That bastard. I knew something was wrong when he kept asking about your health. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. For the first time since your mother passed, I feel like myself again. The prosecutor, not the victim. How would you and James feel about spending New Year's here? The house will be empty soon, and I'd like family around, real family. We'll be on the first flight out. Dad. Yes. Mom would be proud of you. I know. After ending the call with Rebecca, I poured myself a glass of the 30-year-old Macallan that Robert had given me last Christmas, back when he was still pretending to be a loving son rather than revealing himself as a predator circling what he thought was dying prey. The irony of toasting his destruction with his gift wasn't lost on me. The doorbell rang at 11:47 p.m. When I checked the security camera, 2 county sheriff's deputies were standing on my porch. I smiled. Patricia Stoneheart worked fast. I opened the door, noting the surprise on their faces at finding an elderly man in a cardigan and slippers rather than a victim. "Mr. Mitchell? We're here about a report of elder abuse and false imprisonment. Your son Robert Mitchell filed a complaint saying you're being held against your will and that criminals have taken control of your assets." I laughed. Actually laughed. The desperation of filing a false police report on Christmas Eve, Robert had just added another felony to his collection. "Officers, please come in. I have coffee brewing, and I believe you'll find the security footage and documentation I have quite interesting." Did Robert mention in his report that he's currently under federal investigation for embezzlement? Or that he sent written threats to forcibly relocate me to a nursing home? No? How forgetful of him. 2 hours later, the deputies left with copies of everything: the emails, the recordings, the financial documents showing Robert's theft from his clients, the evidence of conspiracy to commit elder abuse. They also left with a new understanding of why prosecutors make dangerous enemies and worse victims. By 2 a.m. on Christmas morning, snow was falling heavily. I stood at my study window, watching it cover the grounds in pristine white. Somewhere in the night, Robert was discovering that his bank accounts had been frozen, his credit cards declined, his law firm partners notified of his embezzlement. Catherine was probably on the phone with divorce attorneys, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Their children were learning that their inheritance had evaporated like morning mist. And I was free. Free from the vultures who saw my age and illness as weakness. Free from the son who viewed me as nothing more than an ATM with a countdown timer. Free to live my remaining years on my terms, surrounded by people who valued me for more than my net worth. The Christmas tree lights twinkled in the living room, casting colorful shadows on Margaret's portrait above the fireplace. I raised my glass to her image. "Merry Christmas, my love. The wolves came for me, just like you predicted. But I remembered everything you taught me. Trust but verify. Document everything. And never ever let them see you coming." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Thompson. Injunctions filed. Assets frozen. Criminal referrals submitted. The balloon payment notice will be delivered at exactly 9 a.m. on the 26th. Merry Christmas, you magnificent bastard. I smiled and typed back, "Merry Christmas, Marcus. Send Patricia Stoneheart a bottle of that Chateau de Chem she loves. Tell her it's a thank you in advance for what's coming." The study felt warm despite the winter storm outside. I settled into my leather chair with Margaret's photo album, paging through memories of better Christmases. Pictures of Robert as a boy, bright-eyed and laughing, before greed poisoned his soul. Catherine in her wedding dress, before designer labels became more important than family loyalty. The grandchildren taking their first steps, before they learned to see grandfather as a checkbook rather than a person. Each image was a reminder of what had been lost long before tonight. The family I thought I had died with Margaret. What remained was a hollow mockery, animated only by avarice and entitlement. In trying to bury me, they had instead provided the clarity I needed to bury them. At 6 a.m., I made breakfast, Eggs Benedict, Margaret's recipe. The one she used to make every Christmas morning for 49 years. As I sat at the kitchen table, my phone began buzzing with notifications. Word was spreading through the family network. Cousins, in-laws, distant relatives who had been part of Robert's conspiracy, all learning that their meal ticket had been revoked. The most interesting message came from my grandson Michael, Robert's eldest. "Grandfather, I just want you to know I never agreed with what Dad was planning. I tried to talk him out of it. Is it true about the education trusts?" I considered the message carefully. Michael had been present at 3 of the planning meetings Robert held. He had laughed at Catherine's jokes about putting me in God's waiting room. He had helped research nursing homes with the lowest ratings, joking that I wouldn't last long enough to complain. And now, faced with the consequences, he wanted to play the innocent. I typed back, "Your trust is intact, but with new conditions. You'll receive funds only for education and only if you maintain a 3.5 GPA or higher. Any contact with your parents results in immediate termination of benefits. You chose your side, Michael. Now live with it." His response was predictable. "That's not fair. You can't punish me for my parents' actions." "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting the trust from contamination. Your parents are financial predators. If you maintain contact with them, you risk becoming either their accomplice or their next victim. Consider this an opportunity to break the cycle." By noon, Robert had hired Martin Fitzgerald, the most expensive criminal defense attorney in the state. I knew because Martin called me personally. "Harry, what the hell are you doing? This is your son we're talking about." "Martin, I spent 3 decades watching you defend the indefensible. Murderers, rapists, financial predators who destroyed entire families. You're very good at what you do. But even you can't polish this particular turd. The evidence can be challenged. Recordings can be suppressed. Financial documents can be interpreted differently. Martin, he stole $675,000 from client trust accounts. I have the bank records, the forged signatures, and a witness willing to testify. He conspired to have me forcibly relocated to a nursing home. I have emails, recordings, and browser history showing premeditation. He filed a false police report claiming I was being held hostage. I have the 911 recording and 2 deputies who will testify to his lies. Exactly which part of this do you think you can make disappear?" Silence. "Then, what do you want, Harry?" "I want him to face the consequences of his choices. Novel concept, I know, especially in your line of work. But actions have consequences, even for privileged lawyers who think their father's success makes them untouchable." "You're really going to let him go to prison?" "I'm not letting him do anything. He chose this path with every theft, every lie, every conspiracy to destroy my remaining years for profit. I'm simply ensuring the justice system I spent my career serving gets to do its job. The media will have a field day with this. Former federal prosecutor has his own son arrested for elder abuse. Your reputation dash. My reputation is that of a man who believes in justice, regardless of personal cost. If anything, this reinforces it. No one is above the law, Martin. Not even family. Especially not family that sees blood relation as a license to steal. Is there any possibility of a deal? Robert drops all claims to the estate. You drop the criminal charges. That ship sailed at 7:43 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Tell your client to prepare for a very public trial. I've already agreed to testify for the prosecution." The rest of Christmas Day passed quietly. Rebecca called every few hours, checking on me. Several former colleagues reached out, having heard through the legal grapevine about the impending fireworks. Each expressed the same sentiment. It was about time someone stood up to family predators who hide behind the shield of blood relation. December 26th arrived with brutal efficiency. At exactly 9 a.m., Robert received 3 phone calls in rapid succession. The first was from Hartfield Financial, informing him that the balloon payment on the Westchester estate was due immediately and that failure to pay would result in immediate foreclosure. The second was from his law firm, informing him that he was suspended pending investigation of financial irregularities. The third was from the FBI, requesting his presence for questioning regarding interstate fraud charges. By 10 a.m., moving trucks had arrived at Robert's house, not the ones he had scheduled for me, but ones sent by the bank to secure assets before foreclosure. Catherine, according to the private investigator watching the scene, threw Robert's belongings onto the lawn while screaming about being married to a pathetic failure who couldn't even rob an old man properly. By noon, Robert was in custody. The charges were comprehensive: elder abuse, attempted false imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement of client funds, filing a false police report, and interstate fraud. Bail was set at $2 million, money Robert didn't have and couldn't raise with his assets frozen. Catherine filed for divorce at 2 p.m., citing irreconcilable differences and financial malfeasance. She also attempted to access the children's education trusts, only to discover that the new trustee, retired Judge Harold Pemberton, a man of unimpeachable integrity, had very specific instructions about access and distribution. By 5 p.m., the State Bar had initiated disbarment proceedings against Robert. His partners at the law firm had discovered 3 more instances of client fund misappropriation, bringing the total theft to over $1.2 million. They would spend the next several months trying to avoid being dragged down with him. That evening, I sat in my study with Rebecca and her husband James. We had ordered Chinese food, a Mitchell family tradition on the day after Christmas. Rebecca was reading through the legal documents, her expression alternating between admiration and horror. "Dad, this is comprehensive, doesn't even begin to cover it. You anticipated every move, every countermove. It's like watching a grandmaster play chess against someone who just learned the pieces move. Your mother deserves most of the credit. She always said Robert's greed would be his downfall. She made sure I had the tools to protect myself when the time came. What happens to the house? In 46 hours, it transfers to the charitable foundation. I'll have lifetime residency rights, but ownership will vest with the charity. When I pass, it will become a resource center for elderly victims of financial abuse. Margaret would have loved that, turning an attempted theft into a permanent source of protection for others." James, who had been quiet throughout dinner, finally spoke. "Harry, can I ask you something? When did you know? When did you realize Robert was planning this?" I thought back to the moment. 16 months ago. 2 weeks after Margaret's funeral. Robert suggested I should sign a financial power of attorney, just in case something happened. The way he said it, the eagerness in his eyes, I knew. That's when I started recording conversations and building the case. 16 months of planning. Of watching him plot against you. How did you stand it? The same way I handled every criminal case for 30 years. Emotionally detach. Gather evidence. Build an airtight case. Then strike when they least expect it. The only difference was that this time, it was personal. Rebecca reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry you had to go through this, Dad. No one should have to defend themselves against their own family. Don't be sorry. Be educated. This happens to thousands of elderly people every year. They're betrayed by the people they trust most, stripped of their dignity and assets, warehoused in facilities while their families plunder their life's work. The only difference in my case is that I had the knowledge and resources to fight back." The next few months were a symphony of legal proceedings. Robert's criminal trial became a sensation in legal circles. The federal prosecutor's son who tried to rob his father and ended up destroying his own life. The evidence was overwhelming, the verdict inevitable. He was convicted on all counts. The sentence, 12 years in federal prison, $1.2 million in restitution to his former clients, and permanent disbarment. The judge, in his sentencing statement, noted that Robert's betrayal of both his fiduciary duty as a lawyer and his filial duty as a son warranted the maximum penalty. Catherine's divorce was finalized in record time. She received nothing. The prenuptial agreement Robert had insisted on to protect his assets, now protecting him from having to share his debts. She moved back with her parents in Ohio, her social media presence vanishing overnight as the shame of being married to a convicted felon overwhelmed her need for attention. The grandchildren adapted. Michael struggled initially with the conditions of his trust, but eventually focused on his studies. His sister Emma, always the more sensible of the two, sent me a letter apologizing for her participation in the scheme and promising to earn back my trust through actions, not words. The Westchester estate successfully transferred to the Margaret Mitchell Memorial Foundation. I remained as a resident, but now the grounds hosted support groups for elder abuse victims, legal clinics for seniors, and training sessions for law enforcement on recognizing financial exploitation. Margaret's rose garden became a place of healing rather than plotting. On the one-year anniversary of the Christmas Eve email, I stood in the prison visiting room, looking at my son through reinforced glass. Robert had aged a decade in 12 months. The designer suits replaced by orange jumpsuit, the arrogant swagger replaced by the hunched shoulders of a broken man. "Why did you come?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Closure," I replied. "And to deliver a message. Your mother left you a letter. She wrote it when she realized what you were becoming. I was instructed to give it to you only if you followed through with your plans." I slid the envelope through the security slot. Robert's hands shook as he opened it, his eyes scanning Margaret's final words to her son. I knew what it said. I had read it after her death, sobbing at her prescience and pain. "Robert," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means you chose greed over family, selfishness over love. I watched you change from the bright, loving boy who wanted to be just like his father into someone I barely recognized. I prayed you would find your way back. The fact that you're reading this means my prayers went unanswered. Know that your father's actions, whatever they were, came from my instructions. Every protection, every safeguard, every trap you triggered, I put them in place. Not because I didn't love you, but because I loved your father more than you loved either of us. You have no one to blame but yourself. Every choice was yours. Every scheme your creation. Every consequence your earning. I hope prison gives you what privilege never could: perspective. I hope you emerge understanding that family isn't a resource to be exploited, but a bond to be cherished. Despite everything, I love you. That's why watching you become a predator broke my heart long before it stopped beating. Your mother, who knew you better than you knew yourself." Robert was sobbing by the time he finished reading. The tears might have moved me once. Now I saw them for what they were, the self-pity of a predator caught in his own trap. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew everything. Every gambling debt, every client you were stealing from, every plan you made against us. She spent her last months putting protections in place, ensuring that when you struck, you would only destroy yourself." "I'm sorry." "No, you're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. But that difference no longer matters to me. This is goodbye, Robert. You're not my son. My son died the day he decided I was an obstacle rather than his father. You're just another criminal I put behind bars. Another case closed." I stood to leave, but Robert's voice stopped me. "Dad, what happens when you die? Who gets everything then?" Even now, facing years in prison, he was calculating inheritance. The greed was so deep it had replaced his soul. The foundation gets everything. Every penny, every asset, every memory. Your children will receive their education funds if they meet the conditions. You get exactly what you gave me: betrayal, pain, and abandonment. Goodbye, Robert. May you live long enough to understand what you threw away." The drive home from the prison was peaceful. Snow was falling again, the first of the season, covering the world in a clean blanket of white. The radio played Christmas music. It was December again, a full year since the night that changed everything. Back at the estate, Rebecca and James were waiting with their children. Real family, untainted by greed, present out of love rather than calculation. We decorated the tree together, hung Margaret's stockings, prepared for the Christmas Eve dinner that would create new memories to overlay the poisoned ones. As midnight approached on another Christmas Eve, I stood in my study, looking out at the same view I had contemplated a year ago. But this time, there was no conspiracy brewing, no betrayal lurking in the shadows. Just peace, hard-won and absolute. The phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia Stoneheart from the state attorney's office. "Harry, I wanted you to know, we got him." "Got who?" "Catherine. She tried to run the same scheme on her elderly parents in Ohio. Apparently, she learned nothing from Robert's downfall except technique. We arrested her this afternoon. Her parents are safe, Thanks to you. The case study we built from your experience has helped train prosecutors nationwide. You've saved dozens of seniors from similar fates. That's Margaret's victory, not mine. She saw this coming and prepared for it. Either way, Merry Christmas, Harry. Enjoy your freedom. Freedom. Such a simple word for such a complex victory. Freedom from fear of betrayal. Freedom from the constant vigilance required when predators circle. Freedom to live my remaining years surrounded by love instead of schemes. I raised a glass of that same 30-year-old Macallan to Margaret's portrait. We did it, my love. We protected what mattered and removed what threatened. The wolves came, just like you predicted. But we were ready. We were always ready. Outside, snow continued to fall on the estate that would soon help other victims find their own freedom. Inside, the warmth of real family-filled rooms once poisoned by greed. And in a federal prison 200 miles away, a man who chose money over morality was learning that some mistakes can't be undone, some betrayals can't be forgiven, and some fathers know how to be prosecutors until their very last breath. Thank you for listening to today's story of Justice Served Cold. If it resonated with you, share your thoughts below. Look at your screen right now. 2 more stories are waiting for you, each one proving that karma always keeps the receipts. Hit the notification bell. Tomorrow's revelation will leave you speechless. Remember, respect your elders, or become the next cautionary tale.